I'd like to call this meeting to order and open the meeting. I advise all present that audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the community via the City of Hobart YouTube channel. And for the purposes of recording, elected members should wait for me to announce them before speaking, if you wouldn't mind. And I request that all mobile devices be either turned off or put to silent. So we have present tonight myself, Alderman Zuko, Councillor Harvey, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Posselt and Councillor Lohberger. And we have no apologies, obviously, but we do have a leave of absence from the Lord Mayor, Anna Reynolds. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, La Truita, who have survived invasion and dispossession and who continue to maintain and strengthen their identity, culture and rights. I recognise the value of continuing Aboriginal knowledge and cultural practice and pay my respects to elders past and present and any First Nations people either here tonight or listening from home. Now, item 2 is confirmation of minutes from the 19th of June. Councillor Dutta, thank you. Do we have somebody to second that? Alderman Bloomfield. Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Items carried. Being off to a good start. Item 3, transfer of agenda items. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair. I would want to request that item 20 on the agenda be moved to item 9 after item 9, the officer's report.
Okay, thank you. So that's the Battery Point walkway. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you've got to put that on there first.
Seconded. Sorry. Thank you, Alderman Bloomfield. Yeah. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried. Alderman Zuko.
I'd like to move item 7 in the close to be moved into open, please.
I think we'll need advice from the CEO in relation to that.
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, I might actually ask Jackie to provide a response, just given the commercial in confidence nature of some of the information.
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, the permit conditions are still a work in progress and they are intended to release as tender documents when we run a tender for e-scooter procurement. So our advice is at this stage they should be considered commercial in confidence, and that's why they've been placed on closed.
Item 4 is communications from the Chair, and I have 4 points or 4 things that I'd like to make note of. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that tonight marks our CEO's last council meeting and last day as CEO of the City of Hobart, and take the opportunity to thank and farewell Kelly Grigsby. I know that it was a difficult decision for you to leave the City of Hobart, a city that you are obviously passionate about. In your 2 years here, you have led the commencement of an ambitious city-shaping program to guide the City of Hobart, a program to position the city as a vibrant, flourishing, sustainable and globally appealing capital city without compromising the qualities which already make us unique. You have prioritised good strategic planning that has seen the city think in a more evidence-based and innovative way to prepare Hobart for change and growth. You've also advanced many important future-proofing urban solutions, like the work done to secure federal funding for ferries. You've been instrumental in leading significant organisational transformation, working in partnership with elected members and staff to ensure that we strive to achieve the best for our community and organisation. And some of those achievements that you've either led or seen completed in your 2 years include advancing our role as a city shaper, demonstrating the importance of planning our suburbs and neighbourhoods, particularly with our neighbourhood and precinct plans, enhancing our approach to strategic advocacy and engagement through the development of the city's intergovernmental relations and advocacy framework, developing Invest Hobart to drive positive inbound investment into Hobart, designed a new contemporary governance model, helped with the upgrades of community facilities such as the Swan Street Park, Zigzag Track and Tolman's Hill Park, increased opportunities for a diverse range of artists to work in the public domain, continue to shape our journey towards a zero emissions and resilient future Hobart. You're leading us well-placed, Kelly, to continue to work to position Hobart as a vibrant capital city and to continue to deliver on the city shaping agenda we've embarked upon to ensure that Hobart is the world's best small capital city, and I've got something else to say about that in a moment, in one of the most extraordinary natural environments. So on behalf of the city and elected members, thank you, Kelly, for your professionalism and contribution to the City of Hobart, and I wish you all the best in your new role as the CEO of the Municipal Association of Victoria. Thank you. My second point is following on from Kelly's departure. I'd like to welcome Kat Panjari as Acting CEO from the 18th of July 2023 to the 30th of September 2023. Kat has a diverse background working in Victorian and Tasmanian local government leadership roles for over 20 years, as well as holding leadership positions in the state and Commonwealth government. As head of the Council's Intergovernmental Relations and Partnerships Division, Kat is well equipped with a wealth of experience to take on the acting CEO role, and I look forward, as does the Lord Mayor, to working with her. The third point is an accolade, which you probably heard about over the weekend, that Hobart's won the Best City in the Travel and Leisure World's Best Awards. So it was wonderful to see Hobart voted the best city in Australia, New Zealand and the South Pacific in the prestigious Travel and Leisure World's Best Awards for 2023. It's also worth mentioning that this news has unprecedented engagement on our City of Hobart social media platforms. Our comms and marketing team responded in real time to the announcement of the award and worked efficiently to ensure the City of Hobart was sharing the story first. Our overall reach across all social media platforms is 376,000, which was all achieved organically with no paid advertising. Our previous best performing post was the Dark Mofo 2023 stats, which achieved 100,000 in reach. So we've reached with this a global audience well beyond our current followers and Hobart residents, with the post delivering positive sentiment and brand recognition for Hobart. And fourth and final point, finally I'd like to thank those elected members who have stepped up over my time as Acting Lord Mayor. This is made better as a team, and whilst I don't often have the opportunity from the Chair to say so, I really appreciate your willingness to work on behalf of, to speak on behalf of your portfolios and committees. So thank you very much. So item 5 is notification of council workshops, and there were 2 workshops, one on Monday the 26th of June, which was around the Tasmanian Housing Strategy Exposure Draft, Economic Development Strategy and ID.Community Profile and Social Atlas. And on Monday the 10th of July, we met for the local government review, operational briefing and progress report. Now, public question time. Do we have any public questions?
Deputy Lord Mayor, we do have one, Acting Lord Mayor, we do have one this evening, and it's from Chris Merridew. So the question is, he's here to ask. Yes, thank you.
Would you like to step up to the microphone and ask your question? Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Yes, this comes from a BBC item I heard this morning, and it relates to a question I asked of the Council at the last annual general meeting. And that is, as you know, Europe is experiencing enormous heat wave, and the El Nino doesn't look too good for us coming next year. Something that this council I asked to think about in December is this fetish, or not fetish, this architectural fashion of the moment of putting black roofs on anything that can be built. Driving in from the airport this morning, I was reminded, looking down in the Mornington Gully there, I would say 80% of the homes in there are carrying black roofs. Why do I not like black roofs? Because they are a heat sink. During the day, they take in this heat from the sun, as we do with floor heating.
This is public question time. Would you mind asking your question,
Yes,
please?
of course.
Thank you.
My question is, would this council put an investigation into changing legislation whereby properties coming up for property proposals be not allowed to have dark coloured roofs from the point of view of the heat that they absorb at night radiates back to the atmosphere. We are trying to cool the world down. This is the reason I like the City Council to look at being a leader in this trend of passive cooling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merridew, for your question. And I've got a partial response to that question, and we can follow up in writing a copy of this response. The City of Hobart is in the process of preparing a climate strategy. A broad range of issues which relate to climate will be considered, both from the perspective of the City of Hobart as an organisation and how it can support the community. The public will be given an opportunity to participate in that process at an appropriate time. Are there any other questions from the floor? No?
There's one question from the audience here. The speaker system isn't terribly good. If it can't be changed, if the alderman could speak up. There's a comment down the back we don't hear terribly well, and I'm about 1 metre from the speaker.
Thank you. No further questions? Okay. Item 7 is petitions. Are there any petitions?
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. We do have 2 petitions this evening. One has been submitted by Mr Blake Nuto, and it relates to a safe and continuous pedestrian link for Strickland Avenue. The action sought is that a pedestrian link from Cascade Silos to the intersection of Marlin Road be designed and constructed. The total number of signatories to the petition, Acting Lord Mayor, are 728.
Thank you.
Acting Lord Mayor, the second petition has been submitted from Carolyn McKell at the Battery Point Community Association. The subject matter is the impact of large tourist buses and their diesel fumes on the health of residents and visitors to the historic suburb of Battery Point. The action sought is that the Hobart City Council ban all diesel tourist buses and those with a carrying capacity greater than 20 people from travelling through the historic suburb of Battery Point. And the total number of signatories to this, Acting Lord Mayor, are 8.
Thank you. Can I have somebody move that be sent for consideration and brought back to Council? Thank you, Councillor Dutta. Seconded by Alderman Barakis. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried unanimously. Item 8 is consideration of supplementary items. I don't think we have any. Item 9, indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Any to declare? No. And I'll just suggest that, just for the purposes of planning tonight, that we perhaps stop at around 7 o'clock, if that would be suitable for a half-an-hour break. So we'll see how we go, but that's what I suggest we do. All right, so we go now to item 20, which is a response to the notice of motion, Battery Point Walkway. Can I have somebody to move that motion, please? Councillor Dutta, you want to move that motion?
Chair, I want to move that the officer recommendation be replaced with the motion that I have circulated to.
Sorry.
Mr. Baxter, Dr. Baxter, have you got any advice on that?
We need a separate person to move the motion from moving an amendment. That's under the regs. So
Councillor Posselt, you
Happy to
moving
move the
it?
motion.
Have somebody to second the motion? Councillor Sherlock, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. I've got the okay from the senior alderman. That the officer recommendation be replaced with the motion that I have circulated, and I also have copies, hopefully the hard copies, and I would appreciate if it can be brought up on this. Thank you.
So this is for item 20.
so just take a little moment.
Response to notice of motion Battery Point Walkway.
Perhaps you'd like it to go through it, Councillor Dutta, whilst we're waiting.
Thank you. The motion reads, 1, the report in response to the notice of motion in relation to the Battery Point Walkway be noted. Number 2, the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to undertake an assessment to determine the feasibility of establishing a new shared accessway along the foreshore connecting Sandy Bay with Battery Point. 1, under 2, the assessment include the development of a schematic design option along preliminary cost estimates and possible timeframes for approval and construction. 2, the design option will address the relevant issues identified by a planning tribunal decision in 2015, centered on a previous proposal including public interest benefits, residential amenity, visual impact, privacy, access to the river, heritage, and relevant planning schemes. 3, engagement be undertaken with residents who occupy properties fronting the foreshore along the proposed location of the new shared accessway, community organizations, stakeholders, and interested individuals seeking feedback on the new concept design option for the infrastructure. Number 4, an allocation of up to $100,000 from the city's 2023-2024 annual budget be made available to fund the study. Number 5, the concept of a shared accessway around Battery Point also be considered as part of the development of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson neighbourhood plan. And number 6, a further report be presented providing an outcome of the above no later than December 2023. I just want to make a initial comment. Sorry, ma'am. Yeah.
Second that, please. Councillor Lohberger, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make an introductory comment, and I reserve my right to speak to this later on. I want to acknowledge that the genesis of this must be accredited to Alderman and my colleague, former Alderman Jeff Briscoe. And I think he was the one who was the driver behind this. And there was strong community support. And therefore, I will only wanted to acknowledge that, and I will reserve my right to respond later. Thank you.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to put some comments on the table. I mean, I think, firstly, that many of the people in the gallery tonight are here to hear the debate on the Battery Point Walkway, and this is a great amendment following on from a great notice of motion put by Councillor Dutta last year on the back of some work done by Alderman Briscoe and also Alderman Sue Hickey, as I understand it. And sometimes these projects take years, decades to really come to fruition, but the fact that it's come back and there is again so much community interest in it really reflects the importance of this project to the broader community. The fact that we've got so many people here tonight, and the fact that I received so many emails in support of the media piece that was done a couple of weeks ago on the back of a tweet while I was in Brisbane on the New Farm walkway. We know that our road network is clogged, and we know that Sandy Bay Road and Churchill Avenue are particularly problematic. There's nowhere to move cars, there's nowhere to expand, and they do become really, really challenging at peak. One of the easiest solutions that we can put from a transport perspective is a Battery Point walkway to take away those topographic challenges of Battery Point. We also know that cities all around Australia are building walkways such as this, and that the waterfront belongs to the people. So I really endorse the amendments that have been put by Councillor Dutta. I welcome the fact that this can be a parallel process that runs alongside the neighbourhood plans, and I think that the allocation of funding is very sensible. So I'll be a strong yes, a strong supporter, and encourage the community to get involved if they believe that this is something that we should be doing. There's a new group that's been established, the Friends of Battery Point Walkway, and get in contact with your councillors, get in contact with the media, look at examples and get involved, and let's build something that will really be a game changer for this city and a real city shaping project. So thank you for the amendment, Councillor Dutta, and thank you for the officers who have put together the report.
Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Acting Lord Mayor. I've got a question. As part of the report, item 3.20, it says the Council has, however, maintained a notional funding allocation in its forward projections to revisit the design options for the walkway in the future. So could I just get an idea about what that notional funding allocation is, and whether or not that notional funding allocation, if it exists still, could be used instead of $100,000 of unallocated budget for 23-24.
I'll ask Project Manager Glenn Doyle to respond.
Thanks, Acting Lord Mayor. It's always great to reread a report that was drafted some time ago, and certainly when this report was originally drafted there was a notional allocation in the then budget. The recent budget process actually undertaken by Council has not yet finalised the capital works program, and I'm aware that Ms Allen is doing a lot of work on that at the moment. So item 5 goes into a great deal of detail in terms of funding. There is no allocation in the current budget. The recommendation, of course, does suggest that an allocation of up to $100,000 be made available from that budget to fund the suggested work.
Thank you. Further discussion? Phil?
Having experienced the same walkway that Councillor Cossart did back this year earlier on, and as well as also experiencing a similar riverside walkway in Sydney, they certainly do supply something wonderful for the community. But what was really interesting was what I had learnt when I was at the Brisbane function that I attended, and that was that these projects take years. In fact, I believe it took up to 20 years to get each piece done through Brisbane. It's not something that these communities just did. It took years. It was done section by section. There were issues throughout. So what we're going through is nothing unique. It is how it happens, but it is possible, and I think it's a really good vision to have.
Any further discussion?
I might as well
Alderman
get up.
Zuko?
Just to clarify, I'm not necessarily against the Battery Point walkway. Never have been. My issue has been all to do with the finances of it. We have always gone down the track of wanting to do something. We put a planning application in, but the council didn't have the allocated funds to do so. One doesn't go and buy a house unless they know that they have the funds to build the house or buy the house. Which brings me to the feasibility, viability. The likely costs, and this is in bold in the report, The likely costs of the design, investigations and planning assessment of a development would be in order of $2 to $3 million. That's just the likely cost of the design, investigations and planning. I recall not long ago the Hobart City Council budget, and I said it was pluck a duck. And here we go on again. We're plucking a duck and saying, let's pluck $100,000 and do something. It's like getting a feather duster out. But the report says otherwise on how and what it's going to cost this council just to do that component of it. And potentially a budget of 15 to 20 million. But also in the report, it talks about 3.15. This was in regards to the tribunal aspect, and it says, based on external legal advice, the council as applicant not appeal a decision of the Resource Management and Planning Tribunal dated the 1st of June 2015. Must have been reasons why our lawyers, external lawyers, said to us, let's not go to appeal. I've got no problem in wanting to go down the track. Show me the money, but not only that, is give me the answers to the planning aspect of all the reasons why we lost this at appeal. Surely the first step for this council to even consider before plucking a duck and spending $100,000 or $2 or $3 million is looking at how we can overcome planning considerations to build a walkway. Now, at the last debate, I did ask the director at the time a list of questions. And I put to this council the first step that this council should and must do is look at the reasons why we lost it in the planning tribunal and see how we can overcome those concerns before we go out and start with $100,000 of unallocated funding, which could end up being $2 to $3 million. But I want to sort of go back to all this media attention over the last week, and it's great to be one of those elected members that's been around for quite a while, because I was here on the first time this came up by Alderman Briscoe. And I can remember the former Lord Mayor, Rob Valentine, even make the comment, well, this is going to be a scramble track along the waterfront so people can just walk along the waterfront, which evolved and evolved and evolved to one of the biggest concrete pillars I've ever seen across Battery Point. And there was a comment made earlier in regards to our road network is blocked. Absolutely. Totally agree with Councillor Basalt. Absolutely. But we have the best river system, one of the best river systems in Australia. And we want to go down the track of spending $20-odd million, plus I'd say it'd be more in the 25s, to build a walkway to go from point A to point B in a short space of whereby wouldn't that $25 million?
30 seconds.
Can I get an extension of 2 minutes, please?
Moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Alderman Baracus. My apologies. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Items
Wouldn't
carried.
that $25 million be better spent to take the impact off our road system on a ferry terminal along our waterfront that goes from Hobart right down to Sandy Bay? We could probably get 2 ferry terminals for way less than $25 million. And then we've got the ferry services already there, which we can negotiate with them to utilise that so we can alleviate the road network. I'm sorry, but we are got this blinkered vision, and without any real understanding of the economics here. I'm not an accountant. I don't have to be an accountant. I've been in business for 52 years. I understand the economics here, and when a report is written in bold stating the potential costs of getting somewhere, and someone wants to put to me that we allocate $100,000 when it could end up being 2 to 3 million of going forward, I'm sorry, it doesn't stack up. It didn't stack up the last time when it went to the planning tribunal. I said that there's no allocated funds. We have spent an absolute utter fortune here on trying to get it over the trying to get it through planning. No one has given me the answers to planning. So why are we going down this track? We must resolve the planning issue first. And I'm sorry, I cannot support this. This is another pluck a duck. And I've got to say, if you haven't read the report, in bold, it's written there.
Thank you. Can I just remind everybody that it would be good to have a really respectful discussion this evening, respectful of other people's opinions. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. From my perspective, I think this is more of a nice to have for the council at a different point in time. At some point in the future would be something that we can more look to. Something that does come to mind quite quickly is that unfortunately UTAS are pushing ahead with their move to the city, which I think would actually impact quite a lot on the usage of the walkway, given the student population would be quite inclined to move it, to use that. So I think that's actually a downside from a traffic perspective and usage of the walkway. I am also very conscious of the significant amount of money that's already been invested in or spent, because it didn't come to fruition, on this project, and I would fear going through that again. I mean, $2 to $3 million, because realistically, while it says 100,000 on the screen, we all know that that won't buy you very much at all. That won't get us anywhere along the walkway. So $2 to $3 million is a lot, especially when, if my memory serves me correctly, we're only carrying as a council $500,000 surplus. So we've already now, in our first July meeting, looking to chew up some of that. I also think the timing's quite odd, given we spoke about capital works, we signed off our budget and budget estimates last month. Now all of a sudden there's this massive, potentially $20 million projects come along. So I also would like, I think, like I said at the start, this is a nice to have, and I think if we were spending funds like that, even $100,000, I think there is quicker wins we could get, whether it's the secure and CCTV monitored and space efficient and attractive bike parking, more bike lanes. I think there's other things we can do if we were to magically find more money that would have a faster win. And whilst I don't have anything against the walkway per se, I don't think it's what our city needs now, even recognising that it does take years. I just don't think it's a priority for us, and there's other areas. For example, we talk a lot about the aquatic centre and how much of an upgrade that needs. With Glenorchy pool closing, the aquatic centre is going to get a lot more traffic, and they're expensive works. I mean, it's that sort of thing we should be looking at. And again, we talk about having assets that we can't afford to maintain. This would be a very expensive asset to maintain. So, yes, nothing against the walkway itself. It's the money and the timing for me.
Thank you. Are you summing up now?
No, I'm just asking a question. Yeah, just want to ask questions. Through you, Chair. Question number one. When the notional funding allocation was provided, what was the reason for that?
Mr. Doyle.
Lord Mayor, my recollection was that the council at the time was keen to maintain a line item. As Ordinance Zuko said, the earlier design was subject to an appeal, and the appeal was upheld. The intent, as I understand this, would be for a new design or an investigation or assessment to determine if a new design can be progressed that will address the issues identified in that earlier appeal. The original allocation was intended for that purpose. As I understand it, would be the allocation that's proposed this evening.
I've got another question,
Yes.
Chair, through you. The second question that I have is, I understand that 300,000 was allocated in the capital works program in the past. Was that decision made after the tribunal appeal decision that we allocate 300,000?
Mr Doyle?
Acting Lord Mayor, the 300,000 was in the forward estimates in progressive budgets since the appeal was handed down. So the answer is yes.
I have one more question, Chair.
Yes.
And the question is, when the report was written, was the 25,000 based on the current design? How was it calculated?
It is very much a guesstimate, and it was based on the likely cost of infrastructure that may be required to address, if it is possible to address, the issues identified by the appeal. But until we have a new concept, it is incredibly difficult to come up with an estimate that has any real science to it.
Thank you.
Question,
Alderman Zuko.
yeah, question through you to the appropriate person. Has the Hobart City Council Planning Division evaluated the reasons for refusal under the tribunal appeal, and has the Hobart City Council has the Hobart City Council Planning Division found solutions in planning to overcome those concerns?
Through you, Chair, the decision that was made by the tribunal on the earlier application was made in the context of an earlier planning scheme. There has been no assessment of a walkway under the current scheme.
Further question, Acting Lord Mayor. If this motion gets up, this alternative motion, does it have any implications for the development of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson neighbourhood plan? Because that's what I'm really keen to see happen, and I was supportive of the original recommendation.
Thank you. Mr Noy, Director of City Futures.
Well, in terms of the motion, clearly it does, because it suggests that this matter be considered as part of the neighbourhood plan. So, and any further information that could be attributed or assist in us formulating that plan would be of assistance.
But financially, though, does it shift the focus onto one element rather than the other?
Financially, is that you again, Mr Noy? Or Mr.
Well, I think the suggestion that it's an additional funding, it's not either or.
All right, further discussion. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. And just before I start, I'll ask a question off the back of the planning advice. Given that we're talking about a different, given that we're talking about a different planning scheme, to the council's knowledge, have the relevant criteria of the scheme fundamentally or substantially changed in relation to what would be considered under an application?
Through you, Chair. Other than saying that the change from one planning scheme to another is significant, I'm not able to give any meaningful feedback on a proposal such as this until we see some designs.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Look, I like a lot of what Alderman Zuko said. We've just had a budget debate where we've discussed the fact and publicly opened up about the fact that this council is in a pretty tight budgetary position due to a range of broad economic factors. We've had to be quite tight with our efficiency in departments. We've had to be quite aggressive in our ratings to the ratepayers. So to have, and as was mentioned in bold, that the likely cost of what fundamentally is a long-lasting pet project of councils, where the design and where merely the design, investigation and planning assessment of the development would be in the order of $2 to $3 million. I think when we're talking about the services and the rates we are charging as a council, to be looking at that in this environment in particular, I think is quite staggering to me. Just based off that, based off the advice that we've got in here, that, you know, there is no doubt the budget identified in 2011 of $5.3 million are absolutely inadequate given cost escalation since that time. It would be reasonable to expect the infrastructure to require a budget of $15 to $20 million. I think most people would read that and expect that the more likely outcome would be that we're talking about $25 to $30 million. And $100,000 to conduct what that, and just note that the screen's disappeared. The $100,000 to do investigative work, to figure out the planning implications, to figure out, to do the consulting that's mentioned in this amendment, wouldn't even touch the sides if the advice that we've been given is that the cost of doing this work before a DA is even able to be filed, before a shovel's able to hit the ground or anything's able to be done, just of $2 to $3 million. $100,000 won't touch the side. I think that's just, we'll get a report that says more reports need to be done. And just noting, and during the budget process, I did get some advice, and I think the rough rule of thumb as of today is $1 million in spending roughly equates to a 1% rate increase to fund. We're talking about a huge amount of money, and we haven't even yet figured out, as Alderman Zirko says, whether or not this isn't going to just result in the same outcome. If we go through this, we approve our own development application for a walkway here, and then it gets turned back down by the tribunal because we haven't taken into consideration the amenity of those property owners that are affected. If this was a private developer, members of this council would be denigrating them in the public. So I'm quite concerned about this. I think if we've got any sense of budgetary responsibility, we'd be at the very least considering this in a more long-term view rather than trying to hop this in front of what we've got even in the council recommendations here. Council recommendations are that this be considered as part of the Sandy Bay Mountain Nelson Neighbourhood Plan, which we're doing to try and plan out the future of Sandy Bay, especially obviously in the context of the elephant in the room being UTAS, but with the motivation that being to develop and grow that area in a way that meets the needs, meets the concerns and the worries of those that live in those areas. But because this is something the council's pushing, we'll happily cut this out and progress this separately and parallel to that. That's not the way we expect others to operate within Hobart. If there's structured plans or neighbourhood plans or master plans, we always have an expectation that people work within that and work within council's expectation for these areas. And we aren't even talking about following our own. And just noting, we're talking about spending a large quantity, almost, like I said, if you say, thank you, Acting Lord Mayor, if you say $20, $25 million, you're talking 10% of our annual budget for a walkway that we aren't even confident we'll get the tick from planning. So look, I'd be urging against this amendment. I'm even less comfortable with the amendment than I am with the motion, but I'd be very much urging people to vote against this amendment.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Just a question. What's our allocated capital works budget for the 23-24 budget?
Mr Reynolds.
When you're acting Lord Mayor, $35 million is the allocation.
Question, Deputy Lord Mayor. And under the Capital Works review, that $35 million spending allocation is in being reviewed in whole. Is that also correct?
Ms Allen or Mr Reynolds?
Acting Lord Mayor, yes, that is correct.
You have another question?
Oh yeah, it's a question. Through you to the appropriate person that can answer the question. When did the notice of motion come forward in regards to the revisit to the Battery Point walkway?
Mr Doyle?
Acting Lord Mayor, the notice of motion or the resolution of council was in 15th of March 2022.
Okay, how many notices of motion prior to the 15th of March 22 that haven't been acted upon?
I don't know if that's
take it on-
relevant. I
on
don't
the
know if
record.
that's relevant to.
Well,
to
I'm
this.
just, it is relevant.
Item.
It is relevant. It is relevant. I asked a question.
You've got to take that on notice.
So, Acting Lord Mayor, if I did have the number, I would tell you. There are a number of them. We have done an audit recently, so happy to provide that detail.
Thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm not sure who the question might go to, but you might direct it to perhaps the previous planning director or the current. Just a little bit of a history lesson as to the exact reason as to why the Planning Appeal Tribunal did knock this back. As I understand it was some time ago, and I was following it in the press, but I think there's a bit of confusion with some of the people I've been speaking to and reading some articles in the paper. There was one that said that perhaps it was just total impossibility, but if I could be enlightened with that by some appropriate person.
Through you, Chair, there were broad concerns about the visual impact of the proposal and the impacts that would be relevant to the surrounding properties. Although, as I said earlier, that decision was made in the framework of an earlier planning scheme, and so that does not carry over to the current planning scheme and any decision that would be made either by the Council's Planning Authority or the Tribunal.
Through you again, Deputy Lord Mayor, was there any problems with the boats getting in and out, and that was going to be an eternal problem that was just almost insolvable to do?
Sonoy, do you want to answer that?
Yes, look, I understand that there was may have been a condition around that, and there were some uncertainties. The tribunal were concerned about the uncertainties with that condition. So I think that was something that in any future application we'd want to fully consider and correct.
And finally, Deputy Lord Mayor, is there some possible way that we might be able to get more of a preliminary interpretation or opinion on, look, it's just an absolute no-goer this, or yeah, look, there's maybe, instead of outlaying, and I agree, to get a really thorough assessment of this, it's going to be nowhere near what some of these figures are here from my experience. So I don't know if there's some way we can just open the door a bit without putting too much skin in the game here. Is there a third way we can look at this?
Mr. Doyle.
Acting Lord Mayor, the notice of motion, or the motion in front of you, talks about an expenditure of up to $100,000. What, if this was to be passed by council, what we would do is endeavour to secure advice as to what sort of design would be necessary to address the issues that Ms Aby and Mr Noy have talked about. Now, I think any of you that are involved in projects at all know that any design costs are expensive. We certainly wouldn't spend any more than absolutely necessary. The recommendation there also calls for some engagement with property owners. The $100,000 budget would be needed to accommodate all that, because it also calls for some likely project costs. Now, the first step of that process would be to undertake the assessment. If it was found that a design solution could not be identified that addressed the concerns, we certainly wouldn't spend any more money before coming back to council and advising you of that. So it's an amount of up to $100,000. We haven't developed a brief, we haven't been to the market, so I can't give you a firm figure.
May I ask a further question, considering Mr Noy's...
Yes, thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
Considering Mr Doyle just stated that the intent of spending the $100,000 is in regards to basically finding a solution to the planning issues, is that what was just mentioned, or did I misinterpret what was said?
Lord Mayor, what I said was the work that is identified in this budget, in this resolution before you, in its entirety, is three elements: a concept design, a likely cost, and some engagement. Collectively, it's estimated that that would require a budget of $100,000.
So, I did hear planning, so maybe I misheard the word planning. Thank you.
Further
One more question.
one
Thank
more
you,
question,
Acting.
and then we'll probably
Yep.
move on.
Okay. So the original recommendation is the concept of a walkway around Battery Point be further considered as part of the development of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson Neighbourhood Plan. So the concept would be further considered. What does that mean? How much consideration would it be given as part of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson project? So
Mr. Doyle?
would we just say, yes, we can, no, we can't? Or, I know, I mean, it's an awkward question, but have a crack.
Acting Lord Mayor, the initial approach would have been a very high-level consideration of the need for that sort of infrastructure. This resolution takes it to the next level in terms of identifying possible concept design solutions, but still working in concert with the development of that plan, so the two are working together.
Okay. Well look, Acting Lord Mayor, that's sealed it for me on what I'd like here. So I'm going to foreshadow the original motion from tonight's agenda. So the original recommendation that the detail responding to the notice of motion in relation to the Battery Point walkway be noted, and part two, the concept of a walkway around Battery Point be further considered as part of the development of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson Neighbourhood Plan. Because I would very much like to know whether the people living in that catchment are keen to be able to ride or walk around the foreshore into the Sullivan's Cove area. So that for me would be very valuable information to have, rather than surveying the people in Battery Point. So that's not part of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson strategy. So I'm supportive of the original officer's recommendation. So I'll be voting against the amended recommendation, and I'll foreshadow the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to point out a few things, especially with regards to what Alderman Barakis was saying, the 2 to 3 million that it's going to take. And I think it's already been pointed out by Mr. Doyle, but it appeared from what Alderman Barakis was saying that he confused and conflated the two issues. And the confusion seemed to be when you were talking about the 2.3 million for infrastructure, not touching the sides. We're talking about this 100,000, but as has already been pointed out, the allocation of that 100,000 is actually for the concept, the likely cost, and the engagement. That's what it's referring to. It is not part of the infrastructure. Just to point that out to you and just to make it a little bit more clear, clear that up. And the final thing I would like to say is that just with reference to what Councillor Harvey was saying, I think point 5 also takes care of your issue, Councillor Harvey. It points out there at point number 5, which is I think the exact same thing that you've just read out, which over there it says, the concept of a shared access way around Battery Point also be considered as part of the development of the Sandy Bay Mount Nelson Neighbourhood Plan.
Mm-hmm. There's a difference.
I think it's, I'm of the opinion that it might be contained in that point 5. We can disagree and that's okay. I think this is a good amendment that's been put forward, and I think as Mr. Doyle already pointed out, it's talking about possible concepts and design solutions, and it's taking the original recommendation that we have to the next level. So thank you very much for your advice.
Further discussion?
I'm going to ask a question. I know that when we develop parks, often we kind of put a plan together, then we wait until grants come through. That's certainly how it's done in Brisbane with exactly these types of projects, getting these walkways developed. Wouldn't it be fair to assume that we would be merely devising and working out how it's done, get it organised, shovel ready, so that when we can get a grant that we could actually establish it? Wouldn't that be a fair question to this?
Thank you. Certainly that's our approach with all projects that are coming forward, and part of the review that officers will undertake in consultation with elected members of the program, will actually be to talk through the status of each of those projects and where we're up to in terms of planning and what grants might be applicable, those that aren't already funded, but certainly coming grants from state and federal agencies.
Question to Councillor Dutto through you, Chair. Just the wording of point 2, that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to undertake an assessment to determine the feasibility of establishing a new shared access way. I was just wanting to understand if that was in response to the planning problems last time, so that we can understand that as the first point. Is that the intent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, is there anybody who hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Councillor Dutto?
So can I, please, thank you.
I might just say
okay.
a couple of things before, just to speak to this amendment. Look, I believe that this ignited quite a lot of interest when it was brought up last week. The Battery Point walkway could solve a lot of issues in relation to providing a safe, accessible, low-grade walkway and bikeway linking Sandy Bay through Battery Point to the city. So there is great potential, and whilst I understand the concerns about ring fencing this amount of money that we might allocate, and certainly I don't want to see the work of the neighbourhood precinct, the precinct plan for Sandy Bay and Mount Nelson to be jeopardised at all. But I think if we can ring fence this amount of money, I haven't had any amendments from the floor to this amendment itself. So I think what we have before us is something that should be tested. I think it will be a good thing for our city to determine whether or not we can have the long-awaited, much awaited Battery Point walkway. So, Councillor Dutto.
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank everybody else for their contributions. I just want to make a number of points in here. Firstly, with regards to money. Now, no doubt we all are concerned when it comes to money, and I would support the sentiments that has been expressed. The point here is simply this, that we're not going to spend 20 million or 25 or 40 million from the ratepayers' money. That is not the intention. As we know, when we have a project of this nature, we go to either the state government or the federal government to get funding for this. And I can identify a number of projects. The 2 bridges that we have built just recently have been quite expensive, but they were funded from the federal government. So the money issue is not really a debate that should be brought into here. The motion here is very clear that we are looking at this, and number 2.1 says this, that it is a development of a schematic design option. That's what it is. And it is based on the fact that we asked the question that the tribunal made the decision under a number of grounds and refused it. So the question that we are asking is this: on the basis of those refusal grounds, is it possible, is it feasible for us to come up with another schematic design that will be able to identify and resolve those issues brought to us? In 2.2, I have identified these issues, and they are these: including public interest benefit, which the tribunal stated, residential amenity, visual impact, privacy, access to river, heritage, and planning schemes. Now, all those are mentioned quite clearly, and all what I'm saying is that this is what the tribunal said, and the question I'm asking, is it feasible for us to have a schematic plan that, in fact, design plan that will be able to answer those questions? If it does, then we're on the right track. Furthermore, when we come to money, the other point that I want to raise here is this. We have heard that there was a notional allocation given by this council to this particular project. Furthermore, I also read with great interest that in the Hobart city deal on page 17, it clearly states that $500,000 is allocated to progress the Battery Point walkway. So city deal, page 17. Now, this city deal was signed in 2019, and it is a 10-year plan, which means it goes up to 2029. Now, so the money issue really is not an issue here, because it has already been allocated. The motion here takes into consideration all the points that have been stated by some of the councillors and aldermen in here. It takes into account all the grounds on which it was refused for us to address it. Secondly, it goes further to say, let us not have a us and them thing, but let us go out there and have an engagement and a discussion with all the parties concerned. And then finally, the final point, which is very clear, point number 5, that this particular project is no doubt working together, as it were, in the development of the Sandy Bay and Mount Nelson neighborhood plan. So I would recommend this to you all to say, let's have a look at it, because this is the only way to move forward. It is not going to be based on the past planning scheme. And the idea here is once we have a schematic design option given to us, then we'll be in a much better position to say yes, go ahead, or no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dutta. So I'll put the amendment as moved by Councillor Dutta, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Those in favour, say aye. Those against?
No.
Show of hands, those in favour.
That's Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, sorry, Councillor Dutta, and the Acting Lord Mayor.
Against?
That's Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly, and Councillor Harvey. So that motion, that amendment is carried 6 votes to 5.
So we now consider the substantive motion. Do you wish to sum up, or are you happy to go ahead?
I'm happy to.
No, it's not for you to sum up, Councillor Dutta, it's Councillor Posselt.
No.
Okay, so I'll put the substantive motion. Those in favour, say aye. Those against?
No.
Show of hands, those in favour.
That's Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey, and the Acting Lord Mayor.
Those against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Kelly. So the substantive motion with the amendment is carried 8 to 3.
We move now to item 10, which is the draft South Hobart Oval and Park Master Plan. And Councillor Sherlock, you'd like to move that? Yes. Can I have somebody second it, please? Alderman Bloomfield, discussion. No discussion? Okay, I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Item's carried. Item 11 is fee waivers, community-based homelessness support groups. Councillor Dutta, want to move that? Seconded by Councillor Harvey. Discussion?
I might just speak on this briefly.
Thank you, Councillor
Acting Lord Mayor. I'm just really happy to see this come before Council tonight. A large number of people are doing it really tough out there, visit these groups and use their services regularly, and I can attest to that. These services make a real and substantial difference to people's lives, and they give more than just food and help. They offer a sense of community, which is just as important in many cases. So I'd really like to thank Food Not Bombs, Dining with Friends, Circle of Love and Care, the Hobart Hamlet Connection and the Mutual Aid Kitchen. And I'd like to make a special mention of the 6th group, Pets in the Park, for the amazing work they do in caring for and treating pets that are owned by people who are homeless or facing homelessness. Pets are family for many of us, and that's especially so for people who are homeless. And I'll make the point that some people actually become homeless because they refuse to abandon or give up their pets. Pets in the Park is there for these guys, and I just want to thank and commend everybody involved, including our staff. Thank you. I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put that motion. Those in favour, say aye. Those against? Motion carried unanimously. Item 12 is the response to the petition Slow Traffic through West Hobart. Councillor Posselt. Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Alderman Varakis. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Posselt.
Thank you. Lord Mayor, look, I think I should speak to it very briefly as I was the instigator of this petition. The residents of West Hobart and Mount Stewart spoke loudly when they signed this petition in such large numbers. And it reflects a petition and an action asked that we return communities to community and allow people to walk safely to get places rather than having a highway running through their neighbourhoods. So I welcome the officer's recommendation. I thank in particular the mobility manager Caden McCarthy for his hard work in this space, and I look forward to seeing what we come up with as part of the local area mobility plan that's recommended, and I'll be obviously supporting it.
Thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried unanimously. Item 13, which is a request for the City of Hobart to join the Every Age Counts campaign. Councillor Dutta, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll just say I'm really pleased to see that Council will be joining with Every Age campaign. We have a letter of support from the Council of the Ageing, and there is so much discrimination from people who are older, which just goes unnoticed a lot of the time and unchallenged. And I think if we're raising awareness through this organisation, I think that can only be a good thing. So I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Item 14, request for council reception, the 7th ICES PICS Plankton Production Symposium. Councillor Sherlock, you'd like to move this? Seconded by Councillor Posselt. Discussion.
Yeah, look, I'll be really brief. Acting Lord Mayor, I'm just really delighted that this has come to us, and this will develop strategic relationships in major Hobart industries. I think, as has been noted in the report, such as education, tourism, science, research, and public and creative sectors. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Alderman Barak.
Just a question at this stage, Acting Lord Mayor. 2.2 in the council report notes that the estimated economic benefit to the city is $907,000. How was that quantified through you to the relevant?
Who would like to answer? Jackie, Director Allen or Director Reynolds?
Sorry, you're Acting Lord Mayor. It's an assessment by our economic team as to the benefits that a large gathering of people could have to the Hobart economy.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Looking at this one over the weekend, I shot through a question which Director Reynolds answered for me this morning around the existence of a policy in this regard, because I'm just concerned about setting a precedent. If we're funding zooplankton and then we get another request and then we decline that one for whatever reason, I just much prefer to have a policy in place so that we're making consistent and fair decisions. So I think that would be something we need to look at as a council, because I understand, if I'm correct, that there is no policy for this situation at the moment. And $13,000 is still a lot of money, again in the context of putting rates up and things like that. And I was wondering, could it not be explored how this could be a cost neutral thing or cost recovery, because people are travelling internationally here, and I understand the cost is estimated around $45 a head. So when you're looking at conference fees and things like that. Could it not be that we went back to the symposium and asked that we can host it, but you'll need to add $45 per head to your conference ticket? Because whilst it's lovely from a relationships point of view, I don't think our ratepayers should be funding this. I mean, we have a lot of talk a lot of times about putting up parking or whatever else because users outside of the city use it, but now we're happy to fund it for the international stage. So I'll just go back to my question. Was there any, or is it possible for us to respond politely with some sort of response where we're happy to host if it's a contribution is made by the symposium to the city?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, that is always
Reynolds.
the prerogative of the council. If it wishes to go back and request that a contribution be made for hosting the event, we can.
Thank you. Yeah, because the reason is if this was just a cup of tea and a biscuit, but it's not, it's $13,500. So I think that we should be looking at that. And again, I'll go back to the point of having policy because, like I said, today it's zooplankton. In a couple of months' time, it might be someone else. And we've said yes, and why are we being selective around it? And we might find ourselves turning into a function centre. So I would be comfortable to completely support this on the basis of the cost was recovered from the symposium. So that's an amendment.
Before we do that, sorry, who moved this motion?
Councillor
Sherlock and Councillor Posselt. The motion needs to be in either the positive or negative, so that we fund this. So I'm just wondering, I didn't quite catch what your initial motion was.
That we support.
That we approve this?
Yes.
Okay, and you wanted to move an
I
amendment?
would be happy to move an amendment that the approval is on the basis of cost recovery from the symposium.
That the approval be on a cost recovery basis.
Or at least a significant donation, you know, like 10,000, at least 10,000 if it's estimated to be 13, but ideally cost recovery.
Discussion. Oh, anybody who'd like to second that? Can I have a seconder?
I've got no problem. That's on. Alderman Baracus did.
I'm happy to.
Alderman Baracus did.
I've got you.
I didn't. That's all right. I said if I have to, but Alderman Baracus did. All right.
All right. So you don't want to second it?
I might move another amendment.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Right.
300 guests to the town hall. I've got to say that's a surprise to me because I was looking at having an event in the town hall and I was told 250 was the max. So I don't know what's going on. So things have increased, which is great. I can have my 300 when I finally have it. It's good to be one of the old fellas on the thing, as we had an ageing thing, so people of old age like myself can still contribute to good debate. We have had a number of requests over the years in regards to large-scale requests for funding for events, receptions, and this is quite a considerable amount of money, which is $13,500. I can never recall ever in my time here putting that much funding towards a reception. We have, though, in the past gone back on similar light of Councillor Elliott and put back and said the council is willing to fund X amount of dollars towards this event. And then they decide whether or not they want to invite 300, 100, 200, 20 or 10. I'm happy to contribute about $3,500 towards this, and that's about it, and the rest come from the organisation or guest can pay. You know, like our receptions in the past in the Lord Mayor's quarters have been on the average of around 40 to 60. And I think that's where in regards to the question about a policy, that's basically where our sort of policy lies, because that has been the norm. It's normally in the Lord Mayor's quarters, and it's normally 40 to 60 people, and that cost allocation. Now, if we're going to go down the track of being fair and reasonable across the board to each and every person in the past that has requested a reception in this town hall, over the years, I think that's reasonable that the council fund up to 60 people. And I'll say that in this way. I was provided the opportunity to have a function for being here for 30, or the longest serving elected member in the city. I was only allocated what was the norm. Anything above that norm, I have to contribute to. And I can't remember what the norm was. It was about 60 people, I think it was. So again, why should we go out and fund one organisation for such a large amount of money where everybody in the past has been given the same treatment? Now, to my point of view, I cannot support this because it's been unfair to each and every person that's come through the door in this council requesting a reception. I will fund, and I'm happy for the council to fund a reception up to what is not a normal consideration in the Lord Mayor's quarters. So I would like to move an amendment that the council fund a reception for zooplankton up to its normal allocation that we do for persons in the Lord Mayor's quarters. Anything above that, it's to be paid for by the organisation. I move that as an amendment. A foreshadowed amendment, sorry. Foreshadowed amendment.
Could you get those words to
Yes,
Dr.
okay, I'll
Baxter,
do
please?
that, not a
Thank
problem.
you. Further discussion on the
yeah,
current
question-
amendment?
Question regarding part 2. If approved, the reception be funded from the council reception line item in budget function 11105 civic support. So we have a line item that covers civic receptions. I'm just wondering, is this going to exhaust that fund, or is this a significant impost on that fund, and how much that fund might be through you?
Mr. Reynolds, I think you wrote this memo to us, didn't you? So could you just answer that, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have a $20,000 allocation for civic receptions in our 23 budget.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Sherlock, did you have...
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I was just wondering if Alderman Zuko's amendment was the same as Councillor Elliott, so it was different? Different. Yours, sorry, if we could just have that read back when we're ready.
We haven't got that yet. So further discussion. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you.
Come back to that question. Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Just on the topic of the 11105 budget line item, and I'll just read from 9.1.2. An amount of $20,000 is allocated on an annual budget for council-approved civic receptions in budget function 11105 civic support. At this time, there are no other council-approved receptions for 23-24. We're a month into 23-24, and with our first council-approved civic reception, we're going to whack out 2/3 of our annual allocation for this. I'm sure the civic reception for the Zooplankton Production Symposium is fantastic, but we have, and with our civic receptions, we do some really good work in diplomatic engagement with the community, in shedding light on issues, in engaging with people in and out of our city and our state. I've been to plenty, I think other members have been to plenty, and they do a very important civic function. That's why we have a budget line item for them. I don't think that however much benefit we will realise from supporting this reception, and I'm not saying for a second that we don't support the reception, but to allocate 2/3 of our annual budget to one civic reception, I think is just, to be quite frank, I think it's a bit silly. As has been said, I don't think it's unreasonable to put in a normal amount towards it, but I think to blow out 2/3 of our annual budget for civic receptions when we have so many really important civic receptions throughout the year. And I just don't think it's appropriate for us to be whacking out 2/3 on one item, and I definitely don't think if we were going to do it for one item, it wouldn't be this one. But I do support giving an appropriate amount. So I'd be minded to support Alderman Zuko's foreshadowed amendment, but I don't think that it's something that we should be putting in 2/3 of our annual budget. I just don't. That doesn't sit right with me. I don't think that's financially responsible with ratepayers' money.
Councillor Harvey.
Just a point of clarification. I've just read through the memo again. The last request of this kind was in 2019, and prior to that, a request was in 2017. So it was implied by Alderman Barakis that we're blowing most of the money for this year, and there's lots of other functions that might want an allocation as well, but there's not. This is a particular funding allocation. So I'll be supporting this tonight because I see this as a bit of a coup for Hobart, a globally acknowledged conference or globally significant conference coming to Hobart. The delegates from that conference will spend up to $900,000, and that's easily done because conference delegates bring partners as well who have a schedule of events, and I dare say that this wasn't a cheap conference to attend in the first place. So I think that $900,000, would be quite easily achieved. So I'll support the motion to provide this based on the fact that we don't have a lot of these opportunities in Hobart. The last one was 2019 and 2017, and I think this being the significance of this conference is quite up there. And I'm just going through I just can't keep up with the pages here. But anyway, this is all about the leading marine science organisation meeting societal needs for impartial evidence on the state and sustainable use of our seas and oceans. And based on the Southern Oceans work that's done in Hobart, IMAS and CSIRO, there's a great connection here with this organisation. Hence, I assume that's the reason for it being in Hobart, that we have such a strong connection with the oceans globally, but specifically with our Southern Oceans. So I'm supportive of hosting this event at that price of $13,000 because it's not going to blow the entire budget because, as I've just said 3 times, we don't get these very often. So this is quite a significant event for Hobart to be part of.
Thank you. Further discussion. Alderman Bloomfield, then Councillor Dutton.
I would like to put a little bit of a different spin on this, in that as part of the city economy portfolio, we actually have quite a part to do with this when it comes to promoting Hobart as being the gateway to the Antarctic and Southern Ocean. And this particular event is all about that. This is about promoting Hobart as the best alternative to invest here. So when they want to go down to Antarctica, they come here. They don't go to Melbourne, they don't go to New Zealand, they don't go anywhere else, they come here. We are trying to establish ourselves as the best brand, the best place. We've already been doing some work on that recently. Some of you may have attended recent functions where we've had leading scientists and individuals come through to see and discuss and be held here. And I think that, especially in light of what Councillor Harvey has said, that these things are really quite rare. This is not just a, hey, we're going to have a civic reception, we're going to spend a bit of money, have a bit of fun. This is actually a sales point. And I think that we've got to invest if we expect to reap the rewards. This is something that's actually a little bit more important and certainly is worth the investment. I wouldn't normally speak to such a thing, but this I think is worthwhile.
Yeah.
Further discussion. Councillor Dutton.
Just a question through you to the appropriate officer. In the memorandum, it's mentioned that FECA, Ethnic Communities Council of Australia, and the United Nations and Overseas Policing Association were treated with similar reception. Now, my question is this: would you be able to tell me, if you have the information, if those 2 organizations contributed towards and how much it was the total cost?
Mr Reynolds.
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, I actually don't know the information to that question, unfortunately, but I can provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Look, potentially I might be, I'm a seconder to this, so I can't move an amendment, but a potential way forward, which will be formed through a question, if you don't mind, is there a way in which we could make this reception conditional on becoming a listed sponsor for the conference itself?
Who can answer that? Mr Reynolds or Ms Allen?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, that would be a question we would have to put back to the proponents of the conference.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Look, I think that could actually be a handy way forward if we are trying to put ourselves on the stage. You know, I do support this event and I do support the funding for it, but if we can leverage that to get our branding put on the conference documentation, I don't think that's a bad thing. And that may not be, it may not come forward as an amendment, as that'll be up to the councillors around this table to put that amendment forward. However, perhaps it could be a recommendation that we seek that. But the notion of hosting a international conference delegation to our town hall that is so relevant to our economy in Hobart, it's a significant thing to do to, as Alderman Bloomfield points out, to cement our place as a gateway to the Southern Ocean and a gateway to Antarctica. We know that some of our suburbs have the highest densities of marine PhDs in the world and in the country, and we should be supporting this economy just as we support other elements of our economy. This is another economic activity. It will bring people to our city to spend money as part of the conference, and recognising that is important, and it does again cement our place on the world stage, not just in this particular area, but in all of those areas where the visiting conference delegation will likely stay and play. They will likely go to Kunani, to Salamanca markets and further afield, and perhaps feel a deep love for this place and bring back more and more friends and family and tell them about their great time in Hobart. So I support this expenditure, but would put that recommendation that we seek sponsorship as well.
Actually covered as part 11 that the communication strategy, the AAPP would be requested to acknowledge the support of the City of Hobart. So it's actually covered there, Councillor Purcell. So good, great idea.
Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. There's a constant theme tonight. There's nice, all these lovely things we can do and it'd be great to do. I find it difficult to support the full amount. I also see that we're doing, once again, the state government's heavy lifting here. Of course, it's great to be Hobart, to be the gateway for the Antarctic and all that, and also to the idea of having a rigid policy on this. I mean, I've heard of instances, I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but I think it may, where Government House, for instance, they do similar receptions, and there's even been cases, I think there's been a doubling up. There's been a function here and one at Government House. So it's something that's, obviously there's no contact between council and Government House that I'm aware of. Could I ask that question in regards to these sort of functions?
Yes, I think it's fairly rare that happens. I think it's usually one or the other, but I'll seek guidance from somebody who may know better than I.
Thank you,
CEO. Thank you,
Acting Lord Mayor. I can't speak about the specific instance that you've raised, but certainly there are often receptions that do occur recognising the same approach. So it might be the Antarctic Gateway, for instance. There has been occasions where the Lord Mayor has held a reception, the Lord Mayor of the day, and then there's been another function at TMAG, for instance. So it forms part of a comprehensive program for delegates and visitors, you know, to celebrate the Antarctic. So that's just one example. So I think we just need to be mindful that there is a need for a policy to be developed, as was discussed earlier, but I'm not aware of any that have been duplicated, but sometimes they are run as series of similar events with similar invitees make up a complete program.
Thank you for that. So, is someone putting forward that a policy is developed? Is that what?
That was part of your motion, your amendment, Councillor?
No, it wasn't part of the amendment, but I would like it to be. Okay.
And as part of that policy, just for this bit of a discussion we've had there with Government House, there should be some conversation, at least I think, with Government House as to how we can strategise the two strengths of these different places here. I firmly believe, that, it is extravagant, this full amount so early into the term, and yes, there's been precedents and all that, but there may be this middle way of being able to facilitate this very important conference. Thank you.
Might want to ride on the tram.
Well, why not?
Thank you, Chair. Now, I do take on board the points mentioned with regards to the total cost and also the policy. I think we should really have a policy on this, and I would support that point made. However, in this instance, I am inclined to endorse the statements and point made by Alderman Bloomfield that there's an economic benefit to the city and to the businesses around here, which is quite substantial. Secondly, it is also, as she has said, we are promoting Hobart, and I think that's an important point for us to remember and note. And finally, I think the point which has already been made, and I want to recapitulate this here, is that I think it is important for us to realize this is also a networking and a marketing occasion for us that we can do, and I hope that this will be supported. Thank you.
And just before we hear the amendments, I just wanted to make a couple of points. I totally endorse what Alderman Bloomfield has said. We'll note that the conference or the symposium is slated for March 2024. When you're organising conferences, you need to get all of that information out to delegates pretty quickly and have those plans for the conference. So I see so many benefits to this, to our city, and it really synergises with what we will be discussing in a later item in relation to our intergovernmental relations. So I see this as a win-win. But we'll hear both Councillor Elliott's and Alderman Zuko's amendments. Thank you.
To advise, and I'm happy to withdraw my amendment and to take my support to Alderman Zuko's, which he's emailed around, which you all have now.
Could you read the, thank you. Is the seconder happy to withdraw that amendment? Who was the seconder for, was that you, Alderman Barakis?
Yes, yeah, sure.
Okay. You happy? Okay. Could we have that read, please?
Oh, yeah, okay.
I can read that if you want.
Alderman Zuko's amendment.
So it reads, it's in our inbox, that the Council fund the Zooplankton Symposium as per other civic receptions held in the Lord Mayor's quarters, as per the numbers and funding. So we're saying, the typical funding that we normally provide to a function, and that the symposium be advised that any cost allocation above the standard civic receptions is to be paid for by the symposium.
Somebody second that amendment, please.
Just want to add the words, and that a policy be developed.
Alderman Barakis, do you?
Acting Lord Mayor?
Sorry, I'm just waiting for a seconder.
Yes.
Can Alderman Barakis?
Yes, he withdrew.
Oh, I see, yeah.
The other amendment was withdrawn.
I'd just like to add the words, and that a policy be, a policy be developed as well to the end, please.
Okay, so we have that amendment before us. I don't know that we need any further discussion.
So it wasn't a discussion. I just wanted to say, could those two aspects be divided, please? Because I'd support a policy, but I don't support this first part.
I think the idea of a policy has been taken on board regardless.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Is this speaking to the second amendment?
Yes, it's clarification. Civic receptions we have regularly. We have the multicultural community that come in regularly for civic receptions. We have the show and the whatever the boats down there. All of those they have receptions every year. This is not just a civic reception. This is something different. This is a different allocation of funding. Can I just clarify that?
Mr. Reynolds?
Through you, Actual, that is correct. This is a specific allocation for the Lord Mayor's.
And for big functions like this, specific significant functions, not
I think
whatever the
that's
club.
the point, yes. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, I reserve my right to speak. I didn't speak, I just put the motion, now I'll speak.
Alderman Zuko.
I find it actually extraordinary now. I'm really getting annoyed on that question, because when you read the original motion, it says the council consider hosting a civic reception. So we're hosting a civic reception. So let's not play games with this and ask questions and for an answer. I followed exactly.
What's your point of order, Councillor?
3.2 that councillor is speaking that may cause offence. I think that the tone in which Alderman Zuko is speaking is offensive to the officers.
I am a loud person, everyone knows that. Come on.
I take your point, but if you can just tone it down a little bit, Alderman
Now,
Zuko,
but I'll
thank
try.
you.
As people know, I've been here 30 years and I've got a loud voice. Lord Mayor, Acting Lord Mayor, as I just stated, the council consider hosting a civic reception. All I have done is impose the words in the original motion onto there. So if anyone wants to argue that component, or anyone wants to change that component, maybe take it up with the author of the original report.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, I'll put that. Oh,
I was going to just say something.
Councillor Sherlock.
Alderman Zuko said to delete that and a policy be developed because it was already being considered. So you can delete that last part.
You can delete that. Yeah, delete it.
Just thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Just a question. Just noting that I don't think anyone here is arguing whether or not to support the event or not to support the event. I think it's a matter of degrees that we're talking about. Just through you to whoever the best officer is to answer the question, should this civic reception be partially funded by the council rather than fully funded to the full $13,500? Would we be talking about the event not going ahead, or would the event, is it a take it or leave it situation?
Reynolds?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, the request has been for the full cost of the function to be funded by council.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, like I said, I don't think I completely agree with previous comments, especially by Alderman Bloomfield, that this is a sales pitch for Hobart. It's an important event, and it's an important thing for us to be presenting Hobart as a place to invest. I don't think that means we should be paying for the full and total cost of drinks and nibbles for $13,500. I just don't see it as responsible, and I can't see that us partially funding, generously funding such an event rather than providing the total funding would jeopardise the economic benefit of such an event happening here, because I dare say they're not coming here just for the civic reception. They would have other expectations on what they're doing down here, and I just don't think that if we said we're going to offer half the funding that the event wouldn't go ahead, and I just don't think that it's a responsible use of our budget, because it's civic receptions that we, and I'll take that point by Councillor Harvey, it's funding we can use to conduct these sort of civic receptions and important civic receptions for other issues and other events and other opportunities. I don't think blowing 2/3 of it in one go, when I think we have other options to allow this event to still happen, to still reap the benefits of this for the city, to still put our city on the national stage for all of the marine biology and the sector that we already have growing in Hobart. I don't think that us partially funding this places that in jeopardy in any way.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put the amendment as moved by Alderman Zuko and seconded by Alderman Barakis. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no.
No.
Show of hands, those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly.
And those against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Acting Lord Mayor. The amendment is lost.
We go back to the substantive motion. Any further discussion on the substantive motion? If not, I'll put that. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no.
No.
Show of hands, those in favour.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Acting Lord Mayor.
Those against.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly. The motion is carried.
Thank you. We go now to item 15, nighttime economy. Can I have somebody, Alderman Bloomfield, would you like to move that?
Yeah.
Councillor Sherlock to second it. Discussion. Alderman Bloomfield.
I just wanted to just move the fact that this was the report put together based on the experiences that Councillor Kelly and I had going to Sydney to the international conference regarding night economy, and it was absolutely worth every moment that we were there, and I commend this report to you.
Any further discussion?
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor, and I congratulate this report, and I think the night economy is something that I think is critical to Hobart's culture and to Hobart's local economy. I would just wonder, did this look into, I'm just reading the report, did it look into late night trading, retail aspect of night economy, or is it more the night economy through you to potentially Alderman Bloomfield?
Ms. Allen?
Oh, well,
I'll ask you to answer that.
It's at all aspects of the economy, so any business undertaking between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m, so includes retail.
Thank you. And thank you all, Acting Lord Mayor. Look, I think, well, once again, I think this is great. I suppose my only question is, or statement is that I hope that this had something of an action item on the end, because I'd actually like to progress the conversations around stimulating and facilitating the nighttime economy, particularly late night trading. I know Alderman Bloomfield's mentioned it in recent times. It's something that I think we've discussed on and off over the last couple of years, and tried to get Argyle Street car park to open later, but couldn't because of contractual issues at the time. But I think it's something that I'd be really looking forward to progressing and actually acting on that to try and help stimulate late night trading in the CBD and other ways to encourage and invigorate our night economy. So I was just wondering, is there, might be, once again through you, is there something as to why this is there things on the horizon for this?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, we anticipate bringing the City Economy Strategy to Council at either the next or subsequent meeting, and there will be a series of actions proposed in relation to nighttime economy in that.
Great. Thank you. That's all, Acting Lord Mayor.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that motion. Those in favour say aye. Those against? Item's carried unanimously. Item 16 is grants, events, sponsorship and partnerships review update. Councillor Sherlock?
Yeah, I move that, thank you.
Any, so you've moved that. Any, Councillor Dutta, you'll second it. Discussion.
Oh, I forgot about it. It's all right. Sorry, declaring it.
Oh, declaring interest. Thank you.
I just have a question, if that's all right. Can, and I will admit I haven't read this one in as much detail, but can I ask the relevant officer to explain point 3 of the recommendation in a bit more everyday, I guess? Well, you know, just give us a summary of what point 3 is all about around the transfer of funds for the heritage account, how that compares to the current situation.
Councillor Kelly? CEO.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Just in relation to recommendation 3, so you're referring to the council delegating power to transfer and apply funds from the heritage account. So there was actually a specific committee set up to serve that purpose, and what we're suggesting is that that's really surplus to requirements. So what we're suggesting there is that that be delegated to the officers to administer. It's an old committee.
So, and just so I'm clear, so that's just the technicalities of approving the transfer?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? I understand, you know, the grants and partnerships and sponsorships need to be tidied, and I feel that that's appropriate. I am, however, somewhat. We've had a slight, some sort of explanation in relation to the Heritage Committee, and I understand that, but I think we need more information in regard to this Part 3. And I'm also cognizant that the Lord Mayor, who has the heritage portfolio, is not here as part of this discussion. So I can't move from the chair, but I just wonder if we could ask for a further report, be prepared before the consideration to transfer and apply funds from the heritage account. I was just wondering if anybody would move that. Alderman Bloomfield, seconded by Councillor Dutton. Any discussion on the amendment? No discussion on the amendment, so I'll put that amendment. Those in favour? Those against? The amendment's carried. We'll go back to the substantive motion. Is there any further discussion around this?
So I'm just a bit confused. Sorry, I'm confused with one word. The funds transferred into the heritage account under subsection 1 are to be applied for the provision. Should that be transferred from rather than into?
We've just, I mean, do you want to resubmit?
No, I'm just curious, because I was under the impression that this was about removing funds from the account. But if you go to 4.5, 2 paragraphs above, the funds transferred into the heritage account under subsection 1 are to be applied for the provision of financial and other assistance. I was just confused what's transferred from the heritage account into something so that you've got access to them, and then transferred into the heritage account. So what are we talking about? In or out?
Well, I think that's partly why I think we need more information about this, and that's why that amendment has been moved.
I don't know when we transfer funds into the account. We take the interest out of the account, I understand.
Perhaps the CEO can enlighten us.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I might just refer this matter to Karen Abey because Karen has been across this, our Director City Life. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. You are correct, Councillor Harvey, in that funds have already been transferred into the heritage account, and what is currently being proposed by paragraph 3 is that the CEO is authorised as a once-only payment up to $70,000 to be made for the current grant year. So the heritage grants would normally be offered every 2 years in about October. We can't offer those grants unless a payment is made from the account. So paragraph 3 is proposed as a temporary arrangement until the heritage account can be reviewed.
Yeah, no, I get that bit. I was just confused. So the funds transferred into the heritage account are the historical funds transferred into the account, not additional funds. No additional funds go into this account.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, all right. Got it. Thanks.
All right, so we're at the substantive motion with that amendment. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put that. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Items carried unanimously. Can we call Alderman Zuko back, please? Item 17, the City of Hobart Intergovernmental Relations Framework. Can I have somebody move this, please? Seconded. Councillor Dutton, thank you. Discussion. Councillor Purcell, sorry.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. Look, I'd propose an amendment which I've just circulated to point 2, which is the advocacy priorities, which is a simple addition to the program, which states point 6, diversifying transport options through investment in transport infrastructure. Now, I proposed that amendment in light of discussions that were had at workshop, but also in light of being the chair of mobility and recognising that when Hobartians are surveyed, there tends to be a pattern that housing is the top of the concerns list and transport and congestion is the second number. Now, I want to advocate on behalf of our ratepayers and residents and visitors. And I also recognise that we do have a infrastructure-driven Premier and an infrastructure-driven Prime Minister who are spending significant money on transport-related projects. So it's a clear strategy from both state and federal governments. Projects that have been joint funded, I understand, are expansion of the Southern Outlet, expansion to the footbridges on the Tasman Bridge, and the Bridgewater Bridge is significant expenditure in this space, as well as ferries, which our officers secured in conjunction with Greater Hobart Mayor's last budget. And I do think that this amendment reflects priorities of government, reflects priorities of our residents and ratepayers and visitors, and I think that it would be wise to include it.
Thank you. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I'm not sure if there was a seconder for that, but I'm happy to second it if not. But I was actually going to say something similar before Councillor Basalt got up and got the jump on me. I think it's pretty critically important. We did have this discussion in the workshop that, you know, some consideration be given to our advocacy for mobility around the city with congestion problems, and I know we have a wide range of different opinions on addressing congestion and mobility in the city, and Councillor Basalt and I have some similar opinions and some very different opinions on many things, and I do appreciate that the amendment isn't, or it's agnostic to the preference at this point, it's just advocating on transport infrastructure. But we need better public transport infrastructure, we need better road infrastructure, we need better active transport infrastructure. I think it's a obvious thing that this should be included as a key priority for us to be advocating with state and federal governments, because I think it's alongside housing. I think between housing and mobility in the city, I think they're the two biggest things that people come to us and talk about, regardless of what they think the solution is. So I think it's pretty important that we do include this in on the list of our wish list or our advocacy list, and when we do talk to other governments.
Thank you. Did we actually have a seconder, or was Alderman Barakis it? Right, thank you. Further discussion. Alderman Bloomfield.
Can I ask a question? I'm just a bit curious about the community sport infrastructure. Is that something towards the stadium, or is that to do with general sport?
CEO?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, my understanding is the reference there came out of discussions at previous workshops with elected members, very much focused around community-based sport. So no, it's not in reference to the AFL or anything associated with it.
Oh, yeah, we'll just quickly...
AFL stadium, sorry. There may be AFL affiliations, but stadium specifically, no.
Councillor Elliott.
Yes, I just quickly mention, yes, completely supportive of adding the transport mobility angle, and it was my feedback that had the sporting facilities added as a priority area, just off the back of, you know, a lot of multi-millions, probably billions of dollars being spent on big infrastructure. I thought it was important that we have our grassroots facilities mentioned there. Obviously, you've heard over the months around the need for drainage and change room works and things like that. So, yeah, that explains why that exists in the list.
Thank you. Further discussion? So I'll put the amendment to add point 6. Does that need to be read out, or is everybody familiar with it? Okay, so I'll put that. Those in favour, say aye. Aye. Those against? That amendment is carried. We go back to the substantive motion. If there's no further discussion...
Just one question. I can't say it here, but is there any cost involved in the membership of City Power Partnership or local 2030 Islands Network? Under the financial considerations?
Through you, Lord Mayor, look, Acting Lord Mayor, sorry, I don't believe so. I think it's council's membership is basically an honorary membership, and we have to sign up to certain commitments as part of that membership, is how I understand it.
Okay. I imagine if there was a membership fee, which there sometimes are, that it would be under the financial section, so...
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll put the substantive motion with that amendment. Those in favour, say aye. Those against? Items carried unanimously. It's 6:55. You wanting to keep going? We're getting through this agenda fairly quickly. Okay to keep going? All right, thank you. So we move to item 18, which is representation to the Tasmanian Planning Commission regarding the draft Tasmanian planning policies. Can I have somebody move that? Alderman Barakis, do you want to?
I'm happy to, Acting Lord Mayor.
Okay. Seconded, Councillor Sherlock, thank you.
Just a question on this one, Acting Lord Mayor. 1.4 in the report does say the representation was submitted as a draft to the TPC on 21 June 2023 due to time constraints. So does that imply that we're endorsing effectively something that's already been submitted?
CEO?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, and I will seek Neil Noy's assistance if I'm mistaken, but my understanding is that from time to time we will present items to Council retrospectively, and it provides Council, often, you know, we bring things to Council before we submit them, of course, but if indeed sometimes time constraints require us to present a subsequent or retrospective report, we're able to do so in a way that enables Council to make any additional comment or feedback or changes that can then be reflected in updated correspondence to, in this case, the Planning Commission, but in other cases it might be, you know, to a housing association or a state government submission on, you know, whatever it might be. So I think that's our practice. And Neil is confirming that as we speak. Thank you.
And thank you. I've got a couple of questions on that. So if we did want to make any changes to this, I don't have any proposed changes, but would they not be considered at this point because it's past the due date?
CEO?
Through you, they would be considered because when we provide anything without formal council approval, we always say that it's subject to formal council consideration, and therefore eluding anybody, in this case the planning body, that we will submit a subsequent response to reflect any council changes by resolution.
And just finally, like noting that, you know, we do sometimes have time restrictions that result in us having to retrospectively approve things. When was this opened up? Like, when did we need to? What was the time period between when this opened up and when we had to submit a response? Is this because it was an overly short amount of time that we had, or?
Mr. Noy, could you answer that?
Yeah, look, I don't have the specific dates, but look, it's fair to say that there are extensive policy documents that require cross-organisational input that did take some time to formalise. So, but I'm happy to take that question on notice and provide that information.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Items carried unanimously. Item 19 is the City of Hobart feedback on the Tasmanian Housing Strategy Exposure Draft. Councillor Dutta, with that, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Discussion. We had a workshop in relation to this from the CEO of Homes Tas. Alderman Barakis.
Yes, Lord Mayor, apologies, I'm just pulling up the... Lord Mayor, I support wholeheartedly the majority of this, the vast majority of this. I don't support, and I can't support part one, which is the mandatory inclusionary zoning. I just fundamentally don't think that that's good planning, and I don't think we go into enough detail on how we aim to achieve good outcomes with mandatory inclusionary zoning without causing economic externalities that haven't been properly considered. I think there's better ways to do inclusionary zoning. I don't think what's typically regarded as mandatory inclusionary zoning works fundamentally. It's not an issue of it's not an issue of disagreeing with the intended outcome. I just don't think it works, and I don't think it is a good planning policy. But the rest of it I completely endorse, but I can't support it with part one.
So are you moving an amendment or?
No, I'm just, I don't think it'll achieve much tonight. I'll just state my position on it.
Further discussion? I'll put that motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
Show of hands, those in favour.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Acting Lord Mayor.
Those against?
Zuko, Alderman Barakis, it's carried.
Thank you. Item 21, which is local government reform. Somebody move that, please? Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. Discussion. Councillor Passelt.
Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I circulated an amendment to this earlier in the day that I would move, which I'll read very shortly, but it's just by way of background. The Premier made a significant announcement to local government reform yesterday, and I think it's wise to review the submission that has been drafted in light of those comments. And so the amendment reads, for those who are not in the room or watching online, that the submission to the Future of Local Government Review Stage 2 Interim Report, March 23, be reviewed and modified at the discretion of the CEO in the context of the Premier's comments on 16th of the 7th, 2023, when he announced that there would be no forced amalgamations of councils. The new submission should mention that Hobart City Council welcomes the changes to voluntary amalgamations, and that the Council will consider its position in due course and when more information is available from the Review Board. The amendment submission should focus on contemporising the Local Government Act of 1993 Tasmania, enhancing funding to local government, implementation of shared services, review of funding sources for local government, review of accounting standards for major assets such as DCAC, and strengthening of the elected member code of conduct.
Thank you. So that's an amendment. Did we have you're happy to second that, Alderman? Thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? We also need to nominate 2 elected members to attend the Southern Shore and Western Shore Community Catchment Community hearings as part 5. So we'll get to that in a moment. Is there any discussion around the amendment?
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm someone that hasn't welcomed the Premier's announcement that there wouldn't be any forced amalgamations, because I think amalgamations need to happen for the good of the ratepayers and the community, and I don't think that... I think we're going to end up with 29 councils again, because not many people actually want to amalgamate, because as soon as it becomes serious, self-interest kicks in. A lot of people get worried about their own turf and holding their own seat. So unfortunately I can't support the amendment because I don't welcome the announcement.
Thank you. Further discussion? Alderman Zuko.
Yes, I don't support this, and I actually have been a long advocate of amalgamations. 29 councils across the state is ridiculous. I can understand the situation in the political arena in the state parliament, where you've got the 3 political parties at battle in regards to this, and I can understand. I think in this, I know in this chamber quite a number of times we have said, let's show leadership. I've heard it that many times by a number of elected members. Let's show leadership. We are the capital city. We all know, or most of us, I'll rephrase that, most of us know that there is too many councils across the state. If anyone has ever done a study of local government you'll find that most councils that have a population of about 100,000 people are very viable. Any councils under 100,000 people are not so viable. Hence, when you look at the rates we actually pay here in Hobart, and everyone always says, oh, well, they're doing this in Melbourne, they're doing this in Sydney, and they've got walkways in Brisbane and all that. Well, when people have a look at the rates that are paid in other jurisdictions, and I know personally, I know the rates I pay in my property in Melbourne compared to my apartment here in Hobart is completely different. So it's a well-known factor. Maybe why? It's because we haven't got a council of 100,000 people. To me, I have put forward quite a number of ideas on restructure of councils. Actually, I personally would like to see no more than 5 or 7 across the state. But we had a workshop and we discussed the possibility of having a discussion with Glenorchy. Why don't we now consider that as a high priority, considering that the Premier and the Minister have announced no forced amalgamations? And if you recall at that workshop, I mentioned that if we're going to have a discussion with Glenorchy, let's get a facilitator in to help us along. So let's show leadership as the capital city and sit down and have a discussion. So let's forget about all this, because at the moment, the board is going to come down with its report, and who knows what the report might say. The report might say that they believe that there should be amalgamations, but politically it's not going to happen. So I believe that we should all seriously consider item 6. It's not an invitation to Glenorchy, is that the elected members of Glenorchy and the elected members of Hobart come together with a facilitator and discuss any possibility of amalgamating. Let's show the leadership. So I'm going to foreshadow a motion, and that's it, full stop. Point 6, and I'll repeat it, and then, that the elected members of Glenorchy City Council and the elected members of the Hobart City Council have a discussion with an appropriate facilitator to discuss whether or not there are any possibilities of amalgamation. I move that as a foreshadowed motion.
Thank you, Alderman Zuko. Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, look, Acting Lord Mayor, just reading the room and in discussions with the second Alderman Bloomfield, we think that it might be beneficial to assist the chamber to remove Part A from the screen, which is that we welcome the announcement and that we'll consider our position in due course, and just leave it as amending it with the oversight of the CEO to reflect the change in priorities as per the Premier.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amended amendment?
Amended amendment?
Well, it's just taking that out.
Sorry.
Yeah, not your foreshadowed
No,
amendment.
sorry.
Okay, so there's no further discussion. I just would like to say that I think we had that announcement from the Premier, and it was timely, because I think there has been certainly quite a lot of concern as to how this process has occurred. It's really important when any big changes occur that our communities, as well as elected members and the sector, including staff, are taken on that journey. And we know full well that there was quite a lot of backlash for whatever reason. Perhaps that might have been part of the way that this process has been running. But I see benefits to this amendment as amended, but also feel that we're at this point in time, the report that we have is very useful as well. So if there's no, I'll put that amendment as moved by Councillor Purcell. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no.
Aye.
Show of hands, those in favour, raise your hands.
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Acting Lord Mayor.
Those against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kelly. That's carried.
So I don't know that your foreshadowed amendment applies, unfortunately, Alderman Zuko. Now, going to point 5, I seek nominations from 2 elected members to attend the workshops. Do I have anybody who'd be interested? Councillor Dutta?
Just a question for clarification. Can we nominate the Lord Mayor in absence or not?
I think we can certainly ask. We can put forward the Lord Mayor if she would, and if she doesn't want to, then I can put up my hand. So yeah, that's fine. We can nominate her.
I would nominate the Lord Mayor and the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Too kind, too kind. Alderman Bloomfield, did you particularly want to go?
I would love to.
You'd like to attend? Well, perhaps we could have a pool of 3. If
it says you can have 3 on there. Yeah.
Oh, we could have 3.
It doesn't say in the recommendation, but it does in the other part. It talked about we could have up to 3.
Okay. All right. Well, if that's the 3, then or Councillor Dutta, you interested?
No, my understanding was reading that it was 3, including the CEO. I don't know if I'm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, whatever. I'm sure we won't be fighting too hard to not attend or attend. Alderman Barakis?
I was just going to suggest that, like, just based off what you said, perhaps the Lord Mayor and Alderman Bloomfield and then you as a proxy. Yeah.
Certainly.
I assume anyone can go and watch. It's a community hearing, so you might get the chance to speak, but everyone else can go and stick your beak if they want.
Okay, so with that amendment that the Lord Mayor and Alderman Bloomfield and me as a reserve attend those. So I'll put the substantive motion. Those in favour.
Can I speak on the substantive motion?
Pardon?
No, on the substantive motion. We haven't had a chance yet. I just wanted to make a couple of points. I just want to make 2 points with regards to the current local government reform process. The first is that it's really difficult, if not impossible, to show leadership on this issue when we actually don't have any of the information we need about the costs or the boundaries. It's very hard, if not impossible, let's face it. And just to demonstrate that particular point, most people that I've spoken to about council amalgamations equate them directly with a reduction in their annual rates. It's from A to B. It's very clear. They expect that less councils equals less rates. But there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that this is true. In fact, some evidence from New South Wales mergers shows that large unseen costs involved in merging IT, planning systems, billing systems and so on can actually cause rate rises following amalgamations. My second point is that a lot of the possible mergers will clearly involve larger urban areas cross-subsidising newly merged rural areas. I just simply cannot see any politician from any level of government, though, door-knocking, say, residents of Kingborough with a proposal to increase their rates to cross-subsidise the newly incorporated Huon Valley, for example, or to make up for rates lost if the suburb of Taroona was to be transferred out of Kingborough into the Hobart City Council area. So the reality is there will be large as yet unseen costs in council amalgamations. Most people won't support the amalgamations if they lead to increases in their rates, and the current reform process doesn't seem to have accurately captured and reflected these costs or provided the information that we need. I do want to thank the staff for all the work that's gone into this submission. Obviously I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'll put the substantive motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Now move to item 22, motions of which notice has been given. Councillor Elliott.
Lord Mayor, Acting Lord Mayor, can I suggest we break for dinner?
Well, what does the meeting want to do? I mean, we've got effectively three more items.
Push on, please. Yep.
Happy to keep going? or do you need just a short?
7, you said 7:30.
I said 7, actually.
Okay, I'm happy to push on.
Is there anybody who wants to break, or are you happy?
I would like to break just based on the content coming up that could actually go for an hour.
Or not.
Or not. But once we start, we start.
Can we have a break?
Okay, so we can, yes, I'll adjourn the meeting and we'll be back at
So I can go for an hour?
7:45. I'll re-adjourn the meeting and call on Councillor Elliott to move her notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll move the motion as listed in the agenda, please.
Second that, please. Alderman Barakis.
Thank you. So, yes, I'm talking about Crowther again. Why? Because it matters and it's serious. It matters because the truth matters and a fair trial matters, as does the presumption of innocence. Being fair and consistent matters. It also matters because sending Dr Crowther's statue to storage to gather dust is serious. This is serious because most Tasmanians want the statue to stay. I understand that many of you will have already made up your minds and will be voting against this motion. That said, I ask you to please consider what is before you with an open mind, as it is a fair request. This motion asks you to acknowledge that there's doubt over the statement that Dr Crowther removed Lanny's skull. This doubt exists and you've received information today from historians demonstrating that. Next, it asks you to support the City publishing on its website the sources it's relied on to make the claims of fact it has about Crowther's conduct. It also asks you to support historians and other interested people being able to have their views and primary source evidence being published on our website so that it's there for the public to see. These are very fair requests. This is about being open and transparent about why the Council is determined to take the Crowther statue away and hide it. I believe it is essential that the community has access to the different views on what has occurred and the primary historical sources supporting those views. This is critical because, while the statue happens to be on council land, morally the statue belongs to the people of Tasmania and, like it or not, most Tasmanians want the statue to stay. We also must be clear on why this council wants to tear down the statue and hide it and send it to gather dust. If it's because Crowther stole Lanny's skull, then this council needs to show its primary source evidence. According to some historians, there is no primary source evidence, but there is lots of opinions and hearsay. If it's because Crowther collected the bones of Aboriginal people, then why only the Crowther and why only his statue? What about the huge and highly valuable collection of books, manuscripts, pictures that the family donated to our library? And what happens to the Allport Library and the collections in our museum that is built on this? Allport, Stokel and the Royal Society were very active in bone collecting. Are we burning collections and demolitioning down the road too? Is it because it's symbolic? If so, that's a very broad and dangerous brush. There are dozens of monuments, place names, buildings, museums, collections that are associated with people who collected Aboriginal bones or harmed Aboriginal people in some way. I could list dozens, but I'm fearful of giving you ideas. If you're convincing yourself that removing the statue is right because the Aboriginal community is offended by it, then this isn't correct either. Some Aboriginal people want it removed, but many want it to stay. And why does one group's offence at the statue remaining trump another group's offence at its removal? Furthermore, we have no policy. We have no idea where the threshold is. Who stays and who goes, what will get renamed and what won't, who will be cancelled and their legacy destroyed, and who gets to stay. To wrap up, tearing down Crowther's statue has been pitched as truth-telling. How can it be truth-telling when we're not offering up our evidence or welcoming contrary evidence? How can it be truth-telling when we paid $20,000 for artworks that were riddled with errors and false claims? My issue is not with the statue coming down per se. If the man was a convicted pedophile, rapist or murderer, I'd happily help melt it down myself. Instead, Crowther was a highly respected doctor, surgeon and Premier of our state. His funeral was huge, with people filling the streets. People wanted to recognise him for his tireless work helping the sick and destitute people, and for his profound sympathy and kindness. My issue is that the Crowther was never found guilty, and there is mounting evidence to show that there are other likely suspects. We cannot ignore that, especially as this is supposed to be about telling the truth. Thanks.
Further discussion? Alderman Zuko.
Yes. Look, what annoys me about this whole debate over the period is we have differences of opinions by organisations, both in the north of the state and the south of the state. We have differing opinions by historians, and we have this sense of pulling down a statue or monument because it's going to somehow resolve something that may or may not have happened. I wasn't around, so I've received a number of emails, vast number of emails from people. And as the saying goes, there is three sides to the facts and three sides to the truth. What are they? Some of us may think we know, some of us may think we know better than other people. When there's controversy over something, we shouldn't just simply come into this chamber and make a decision because, well, that's what we want to believe. Because if we're going to look at monuments and say, well, Crowther did this and that, would we, if we had the Colosseum in the middle of Hobart, consider ripping that down because of what transpired in the Colosseum for years? Because it wasn't a place where we all know we weren't playing Aussie rules football. It was a place where many controversies happened. So what would be the reaction if someone wanted to pull down the Colosseum because of what may have transpired there many, many years ago? Because that's the reality here. What we are doing here, we want to make a statement and pull down a statue and leave a plinth, where to me, if I wanted to make a statement, I'd be leaving the statue there and having an interpretation of the other argument there so people can actually look at it and make their own evaluation. I find it extraordinary that we've spent so much time debating whether or not a statue can go down. We're going down the track of planning. I really would love to know the true extent of the costs associated with all this, because a lot of the time when we go down costs in the council, we don't actually add the huge costs of our directors and the huge costs of our CEO and huge costs of everything else that's associated with it all. And what is it all about? To prove a point that one side of the argument has got a greater say than the other. I find it when there's conflicting comments by organisations, like having your two family members in a room, and one says it's black and the other one says it's white. As a parent, what do you believe? And that's what I find this as. Look, I can't support this. I will not support this. And I think it's a travesty that we're going down this path, all for what I consider political means.
Councillor Kelly?
I'd like to move an amendment which I have circulated earlier.
Can I have somebody second the amendment, please, if you've had a chance to have a look at it? Is there anybody who can second this amendment? it will lapse for want of a seconder.
I've spoken, I can't.
You can't,
No.
yeah, you've spoken. Okay, so the amendment unfortunately lapses. Did you want to speak to the motion anyway, Councillor Kelly?
Sure. Thank you, Acting Lord Mayor. I think, yeah, look, the whole community's tied with this whole matter, and look, for the sake of, it's taken 134 years to get to this end point now, and it's a pity that every last page hasn't been turned and every last examination hasn't been at least considered, because that's just going to linger on now, whether you agree or not with it. And as I say, it's taken so long. What's the big deal of something like this not getting a further last little bit of analysis to just make sure that every last person has been heard, despite what the vote is? It's sad what's happened with this whole story, and look, and it comes down to here we go again here in Hobart. We've seen it with UTAS, where lack of proper consultation. We've seen it with the stadium, and it's just sad how it just divides the community. There'll always be a percentage for radically and a percentage against radically, but it's the middle ground that we've all got to move forward on, and unfortunately it just hasn't happened on this occasion. It's a real pity that an important document, it's an incredible document the Australian government actually did, and it's from the Australian Heritage Council, and it's the protection of Australia's commemorative places and monuments. It's a very mature document. It's done 4 years ago. Wasn't even considered in the whole story. And I'd just like to read a real little bit from that, if I may. And it talks about how, you know, look, we've just got to have a mature approach to doing it. This is the federal government with the best minds writing these reports. It's not a small end place just doing it. It says the addition of plaques, and it just says, look, you know, stuff like that, it doesn't edit history, but it adds to the story. It's a striking example how a dialogue can occur in memorialisation where one view of the past takes issue with another, and history is seen not as a final statement but as a contingent and contested narrative. We're actually saying that this monument is not the final truth about this event, that we can revisit this event, this question, and approach it in different ways. Expansion could see colonial monuments turned into points of reflection and tools for education instead of attempts to tidy up the past by their removal. And it just, one last thing, it brings up the site of reflection, and it talks about a place called Myall Creek Massacre Memorial Site in New South Wales. And the monument there commemorates the unprovoked massacre of about 28 Rurray women, children and old men by a group of stockmen in 1838. And it's a memorial that has great symbolic significance for the recognition of Aboriginal and other Australians. At the dedication in 2000, descendants of those who were murdered and descendants of those who carried out the massacre came together in an act of personal reconciliation. A plaque at the site states, erected on 10 June 2000 by a group of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australians in an act of reconciliation and in acknowledgement of the truth of our shared history. And I think we've really lost the moment. It's some super important document, not even considered, and here we are, we've divided the community again. So I just think it's a big lesson we've got to learn, and it's a pity we can't have that monuments policy. Here, you know, we're going to talk about the John Franklin statue next. How many hundred thousands of dollars are going to spend on that? Tear the community apart for another 2 or 3 years, and so on and so on. So I just think there's a big lesson to be learned from this, and hopefully this council is mature enough to take that on the chin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Point of order. Well, point of clarification. Councillor Kelly can actually move his amendment because this is a notice of motion from Councillor Elliott. And if the mover and the seconder agree to the motion, to the amendment, it can be absorbed into the motion because it's moved from the floor.
I'll get some advice. Thank you for that clarification.
It's a notice of motion. It's not a council motion.
Though, and I'm not sure which part of the regulations you're looking at.
It's a notice of motion. It can be absorbed into the motion. By the mover and the seconder.
I'm, to be honest, not sure what the correct
Check the
situation is
record.
there, so that probably falls to the, in that situation, fall to the discretion of the chair's overriding power to chair the meeting.
I've been reading, I've been poring over this, and I don't accept that application. Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Purcell?
Look, I just need to make a few points just in light of the things that have been said. It's only I'm going to keep it very brief, but one of the key themes that's emerged for the three speakers thus far is that the community is divided and the majority of people support Crowther remaining. I just wanted to point out that there was a high-profile state petition that was launched in that vein a month ago, and in that time that petition has garnered just 774 signatures, or less than 0.1 of the Tasmanian population. So the community is not divided, and the vast majority of Tasmanians appear to support Hobart City Council actions. Otherwise, they simply would have signed the petition that was before them.
I have a question through you, Chair, and the question is the statement made by Alderman John Kelly that there was lack of proper consultation. Can you please, through you to the officer, the question is, was there proper consultation, or there was no consultation or lack of consultation with regards to this matter?
CEO.
Sorry, Acting Lord Mayor, look, my view is that that is sort of straying into getting officers into the debate of the matter. I think we need to remember what's before us, and it's in regards to the planning elements, essentially, of Crowther, and on that basis I think the officers have taken council through many a report on this matter, and I don't think it's appropriate to put officers in a position tonight where we're providing advice on consultation that's occurred over many years. Thank you.
Want to make a comment, Councillor Dutta?
Thank you. Yeah, I would just again keep it very brief. A number of statements have been made. Now, point number one, any issue of this nature will divide people. There is division, and I accept that, but not to the extent that everybody is against it. It is really not true. So that's the point I want to make. Any issue, when we make decisions, the community have different opinions and positions, they will be divided. Point number two is this, that we haven't given this a fair trial. Now, this chamber is not a legal chamber. We don't look at evidence based on the legal procedures when we look at evidence, as it were. Thirdly, the other important point for me is this, that in fact, there has been a democratic process all along. And whenever the council makes decision and the staff, they do a lot of work. And the points made in there, 10 points by staff, quite clearly states very clearly that there was such a thorough and long consultation process. And so many people presented and came here and represented as well. So really, whenever a decision of this nature and magnitude is taken place by the council, the staff really do their homework and then bring their recommendation to us. And the final point I want to make is this, that really, we were elected through a democratic process. We came here as elected members, and all of us follow the democratic principle. We have a motion, we vote for it, we debate it, we vote for it. And so the council voted for it. Just because it lost doesn't mean that the council is doing something wrong. I mean, we've got to now accept the fact that we will have things to say, it will be refused. And I don't have to go crying to say I'm going to have my own way because it didn't go that way. I'm in a democratic elected country. I'm not in Fiji where they did the coup and it was ruled by one particular leader. I'm here, that's why, because I know this is a democratic chamber, it makes its decisions, and whatever decision the council make, and a very classic one is the walkway, for example. It was 6-5, so close, but in a democratic decision, we have to go with the majority. And therefore, the evidence is overwhelming for me to say that we have followed all the processes, we made the decision democratically, and we need to go with it. Thank you very much.
Have Councillor Sherlock.
Thank you very much, Acting Lord Mayor. Just like to say a few things about this particular motion. Reason being that I was the chair of the Community Culture and Events Committee when this particular proposal came to us last council. I note that a motion similar but different to this one was submitted on the 20th of March, which by a majority of 9-3 was lost. I'm rather perplexed as to why something similar is coming before us again, and therefore I think it's imperative that I take this opportunity once again to inform those who are willing to listen on the process that has and will see community given the chance to voice their views. I think many of us have said in this chamber many times that policy on the fly is not something that we want to participate in. That is not how I or many of us around the table wish to govern. So what has been the process so far within the framework of our community engagement process? Because it's been suggested just a moment ago that we did not engage. So let me give you some evidence and some facts as to how we did engage. Stage one, it actually started back in 2016 if you really want to be precise about it, but let me take you through the last 17 months. Stage one, the engagement process, which was running in concurrent with public artworks. The initial Your Say survey ran for a little over 10 months, April 2021 to February 2022, alongside the public artworks. Did you say something then? If you didn't, you were given the opportunity to. Stage two, engagement seeking options for a permanent response on the site. Informal consultation occurred after February 2022 for several months with a series of one-on-one conversations. Did you participate then? If you didn't, you lost your moment. Then formal consultation occurred across several months from May 2022 to July 2022. Did you say something then? If you didn't, you lost your moment. Stage three, the engagement addendum. A further period of public engagement occurred during March 2023 via Your Say for the proposed amendment to the Franklin Square Conservation Plan. Factoring all of this in, so far the city has undertaken approximately 17 months of consultation and engagement in relation to just this specific project. This does not include time spent on any correspondence feedback that may have been received outside of the stages outlined above. I think when something is contentious, and I think we've said it in the chamber here many times, we talk about relying on qualified advice. Well, my learned friends, the qualified advice from our staff after doing months and months and months and months and yet again months of consultation was recommending partial removal. Let's remember that. Let's not buy into a mistruth that the bronze element will, and I quote, go into storage collecting dust. This is entirely incorrect. It is also incorrect that council is trying, and I quote, to hide it. It referring to the bronze element. How do I know that this is incorrect? Because our position by majority is clear. Had people done their research, as our position agreed to by majority, that it would go, and I quote, to the city's valuables collection pending further investigations with local collecting institutions for a permanent location for this element. Oh look, not into storage collecting dust at all. So, where are we now in the process wheel? It is now at the stage of lodging an application to have the bronze element removed, as per our decision in August to have the bronze elements placed in valuable collection in consultation with stakeholders. So where are we now? We're now at a different process. We're talking about the planning. So the concept still applies. We've done the process of community engagement. Now we're at this stage. To my understanding, it was advised on the 10th of July, so community members have until the 24th of July to make written representations. Oh look, once again, another engagement process. The removal of the bronze element and a new sign, information regarding this is available on our website called Crowther Reinterpreted page. Then any representations will be considered and then a report will come to council for us to consider as a planning authority. Any member of the public will have 14 days to make a representation from the date that it was advertised. Oh look, more consultation.
30 seconds, thanks,
Councillor. 2 minutes, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Dutta. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Carried unanimously.
So in case people were not aware of the process, let me make it very clear. so that there are no mistruths around the community's ability to engage. Number one, public engagement process has been undertaken to form our position, i.e. the removal of the bronze element. Now, Council is acting on that with the submission of the planning application, which is within a statutory framework. Does this stage enable community to engage? Of course it does. This stage gives the community an ability to make written submissions for Council's consideration. So what next? What if you're not happy with Council's decision? Well, actually, you have another thing that you can do as part of community. Once Council's decision has been made, anyone who has made a written representation can then ultimately appeal Council's decision should representors be unsatisfied with Council's decision. This is the process. It is inequitable to jump the process wheel by ruling via motion. Policy is so important. We've heard it all around the table today. Everybody agrees, want a policy for this, want a policy for that. This has been said in this chamber many times. So if you care about process, and if you actually genuinely, truly care about policy, and you genuinely, truly care about good governance in a democratic country, if you care about equitable governance, I would urge all of you to vote against this motion. And with reference to what Councillor Kelly was saying with regards to the Australia's commemorative places and monuments, I did just want to clarify that the statue itself is not on a heritage list. It's not part of a register either, just the park is. I do also recommend that if you have any further questions, you should really all listen to the YouTube meeting of 4th of August 2022, where individuals made deputations, and that's from Purcell Architects to talk about heritage and significance. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask
Further
a question?
discussion?
Question, please?
Yes.
Just for the relevant director, what is the valuables collection? Where is that and what is that facility?
Lord Mayor, I can't answer that question.
So, do we have any answer?
Through you,
CEO?
Lord Mayor, sorry, I'm just looking behind you to Karen. My understanding is that valuables collection is essentially the art collection and the valuables collection of the city. So I can't tell you what's in there, but I do understand there is a catalogue of these things within the city, but I would need to take advice from officers on where that's held. But I'd say it's in a number of different locations across the city.
I think, yes, the CEO is correct. That's my understanding. We do have a collection of valuables. But you know, in terms of where they're located or the register themselves, I can't provide you with a definitive answer at this point, but we can take it on notice.
Further discussion?
I
want to sum up?
No, I have another question. What is the well, okay, I'll just go to the question. But what is the status of discussions with other parties? Because I'd kind of lost hope that that was happening. So I'm keen for an update on what's the status of discussions for an alternative home, apart from the not sure where it is valuables collection. What's the state of discussions with TMAG, or has anything happened or progressed with that?
CEO?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, look, I think there's a number of things that are being raised as part of the debate and discussion that we're just not in a position to provide reliable information to you on tonight. We just haven't got the officer here who's been involved in the process from go to woe. Unfortunately, they are on leave, otherwise they would have been here tonight to address these questions. Had they been provided earlier, of course we would have had answers for you, but that hasn't been the case, so I will need to take that on notice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to add a point of clarification just with regards to that particular... just to clarify around the collecting institutions, to my understanding from August 2022, there would just be further negotiations with local collecting institutions. There are, to my understanding, there's more than one collecting institution for its permanent location. Thank you.
And my point of clarification is I'd like the update on the what discussions have had with collecting institutions.
I think that's been taken on notice. Thank you. Right, if there are no further discussion, would you like to sum up? Councillor Elliott?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, so I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. Show of hands, those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Barakis, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Kelly,
Those against?
Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Harvey and the Acting Lord Mayor. The motion is lost.
Just a clarification. So is it 7-4 or 7-3?
It's 7-4.
Oh, thank you so much.
Item 23 is responses to question without notice. Can I have somebody move those, please? Passelt, seconder. Alderman Barakis. There's no discussion to those, so I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Just a question, please, for CEO. What engagement or consultation did we do before we voted on the decision to double the rates for visitor accommodation and for residential land? What community engagement did we do?
CEO?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, we didn't undertake any extensive community engagement as part of that process. It was worked through as part of the budget discussions throughout the budget preparation process. There is, however, a rating strategy coming up where members of the public will, of course, have the opportunity to input into the penultimate rating strategy. But specifically regarding your question, there wasn't extensive consultation undertaken with community.
There wasn't any external consultation, was there?
That's correct,
Yep,
other than, of course, Council considering the matter and voting on it.
Thank you. And just another question. I've received a lot of queries about this, and in the media the Lord Mayor referred to a 10-month window that the rates team are keen to hear from ratepayers about special circumstances they have in relation to the doubling of residential rates on residential land. I was just wondering what those special circumstances are and what they mean for ratepayers.
CEO?
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, my understanding was that that was a misspeak on behalf of the Lord Mayor and wasn't actually reflective of the current position of the Council. We are happy to provide some specific advice to you in regards to how this process will work from an organisational administrative perspective, but I do understand that that information was misspoken at the time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we just signed off or noted the responses to questions. Thank you for that on the direct appointments information. My question is, in what we've just noted there, we have 9 senior and executive appointments, direct appointments being made in the past 2 years. I was just wondering if that's a new norm for the Council, if we could expect the same sort of volume coming into the next 2 years?
CEO.
Through you, Acting Lord Mayor, there's no doubt that that was a number that hasn't been seen previously, certainly not in the recent 5 years or so. It was part of a talent acquisition approach, as I've outlined to elected members previously, and it's also important to note that some of these relate to short-term contract positions as well. They are not ongoing roles. Thank you.
Thank you. And my final question, please, and it's one I suspect will need to be taken on notice. It relates to data. It's around can I get some information around the number of parking tickets that have been cancelled using the reason code R4 and R5, just for the relevant parking director?
Through you, Chair, I think that question will have to be taken on notice.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any further questions without notice? I have one really for the record. Given recent federal government investigations of PwC and now the other big 4 consultancy firms, what assurances can be provided as to what is happening at Council in regard to consultancies, and what can we take on board at the City of Hobart and local government more generally in Tasmania?
Thank you, Deputy. We'll take that on notice. Thank you.
Okay, so we've come to the end of the closed meeting. So I ask that somebody move that we move into the closed portion. Thank you, Alderman Barakis, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Those in favour? Those against? Items carried. And thank you for those who have listened from home. Good night.